There's only 4 words. This one's for John.
This one's for Pat.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of NFL with Kyle. Tonight, we're going to be discussing fantasy football sleepers for the 2024 season. These are players that will win you your league, and they're not lists made up of my own doing. We're going to explore CBS's, ESPN, and most credibly, PFF. We're going to go through and we're going to give you the list, the names, the positions, and then I'm also going to give you my opinion on the analysis at the end and during. So let's get started with what I believe is PFFs. Now, keep in mind, these fantasy football sleepers have an average draft position below number 120 by consensus boards, but are ranked considerably higher by PFF's lead fantasy analyst, Nathan Jahnke. So the way, I guess, that you make the criteria of being a fantasy sleeper is that you have to be ranked 120 or below. So if the big board has you ranked at 100, that doesn't meet the criteria. We're talking about people that you will be able to draft in round 9, in round 10. So that is why I say this is where you can win your draft, because if you find yourself a week in and week out starter in the 9th round, 10th round, you're in really good shape. And at least for me, when I'm drafting, the way that I tend to do it is I take the most thin position and I draft that first. For instance, people will draft, say, Patrick Mahomes at number 1 in the first round. And we got Nash in the chat. What's up, Nash? People would draft Patrick Mahomes in the first round, even though you can get a solid quarterback in the 4th and 5th round. Meanwhile, there's only a handful of running backs, and then after round 2, round 3, you're scraping for a running back, whereas you could still draft a wide receiver, a starting wide receiver, or a starting quarterback in the later rounds. So it's always been my philosophy to draft the most thin positions first, and then later in the rounds, draft some of those position groups that have starting talent in the 5th, 6th round. So I think position group is going to be a big part of this as well. And Nash said, we talking college football. We are kind of talking college football. We're talking fantasy football. I don't know. Let me know in the comments if you play fantasy football, Nash. I know we're in a league. Me and some of the Navy guys, we're in a league, and I won the fantasy football trophy year 1. And I expect to win it back this year. And maybe it'll be due to some of the players on this list. Let's take a look and see what. Okay, fantasy football sleepers for the quarterback position according to PFF. Will Levis stands out because of his ADP, average draft position, and situation. Levis is one of the few young quarterbacks who is assured a week 1 starting job and falls outside of the top 120 in ADP. So right off the bat, they're saying Levis is one of the only quarterbacks that is out of the 120 top ADP that is guaranteed to start week 1, right? You could say Bo Nix is outside the 120 ADP. ADP is just average draft position. Okay, so if Bo Nix is outside the 120 ADP, but here's the thing, he might not start week 1. So you are taking a risk if you draft Bo Nix, hoping that the Broncos start him week 1. Will Levis is starting week 1. We know that. So just that fact alone makes Will Levis a fantasy football sleeper, because you're going to get volume, you're going to get play, and you also have the upside of adding receiving weapons, adding an offensive play caller, adding Tony Pollard. Like the Tennessee Titans are quietly having a really good offseason. And if Will Levis comes out and responds well to the talent that they've surrounded him with, including the offensive line that they have made just decades better in one offseason, Will Levis could have more of the type of performances that he had his first game as a starter when he threw 4 touchdown passes in his first game. Of course, the offensive line was horrendous. He didn't have weapons around him, and that's why he threw a total of 4 touchdown passes his second game to the end of the season, if you add up all of them. But that first game, I think we got a glimpse into Will Levis. And if you're a Titans fan or you're Will Levis, you still think that you have what it takes to be a starting quarterback in this league. And if Will Levis does work out, whoever drafted him, look, here's the thing. Even if you're like, dude, I'm not drafting Will Levis as my starting quarterback, no problem there. You don't have to draft Will Levis to be your starting quarterback. But what you can do is you can draft him late in the draft. And if your quarterback gets injured, use Will Levis as an insurance policy. You also have to take a very low risk being able to draft him in the late rounds with massive upside if he does boom for the Tennessee Titans. And Nash said, I just do pigskin pick 'em. And how does that work? Is that where you pick the winner of each game? I believe that's how that works. And what do you guys think of the quality of this video? I've been working with some other softwares to try to make this video more clear. I also got my logo scrolling on the bottom, which I didn't know that was going to be covered by the ticker. So I'm actually going to adjust this in real time, and this is part of part of having a podcast that you're working on day in and day out. There we go. Honestly, it could be even lower. I'm sorry. Let's see what that does. All right. I like that right there. And Nash said, yeah, okay. So I don't know if he's saying, yeah, that the quality is a little bit better, or yeah, that's how Pig Pick'em works, where you just pick your game. But either way, I love doing the picks. We used to call them the picks, and how it worked for us at least. And I'll just be really quick. You have 16 games, and then you pick the winner of each game, and then it's a point system. So you have 16 points. And basically, let's say that the best team in the NFL is playing the worst team in the NFL. You would pick the best team to win. You would put 16 on that. You're wagering the most points. And then your toss-up games where you really don't know who's going to win, that's what you'd put a 1 on or a 2 on. And if you wanted to be ballsy, you could, put 10 points on a game that could be a toss-up, and that's how you show you're confident. But you add and subtract the points each week, and then whoever has the most points at the end of the season wins. It's a lot of fun. But Will Levis comes in because of his ADP and situation. A former top 10 fantasy quarterback returns. Daniel Jones missed much of the 2024 season due to injury, but he was a top fantasy quarterback in 2022. And now he has a better group of wide receivers to throw to this offseason. So Daniel Jones, definitely, I say this all the time, we have recency bias in sports is at an all-time high. I think I just summoned Bill by talking about Daniel Jones. We're going to find out here in a second. But the recency bias is at an all-time high. A player goes out and has a top 10 season, and then last year, Daniel Jones is hurt, doesn't really play, and he will not be drafted. But the bottom line is that he had a top 10 season the year before, and now he has better weapons. Now he has he's in a better situation. He's playing for his job. He has Malik Neighbors. So there is a scenario where Daniel Jones has a bounce back season. He finished as the QB9 in 2022, in large part thanks to his rushing ability, which is easy to forget about. He had 708 rushing yards, which ranked 5th at the position, while his 7 rushing touchdowns were tied for 3rd. We're not talking about Lamar Jackson. We're talking about Daniel Jones, and it was easy to forget this. He recorded a below average big time throw rate and an above average turnover worthy throw rate. But his volume in the running and passing game was enough to vault him into the top 10. Jones did not get off to a strong start last year before dealing with the injuries that decimated the rest of the season, but there is reason to believe that Jones could match his 2022 fantasy production this season. The wide receivers he'll have at his disposal are much better than they were at the start of last year. Darius Slayton, Paris Campbell, and Isaiah Hodgins were the three primary wide receivers when Jones was healthy last year. This year, he has Malik Neighbors as his new lead wide receiver. Wan'Dale Robinson is healthy and should have his number 2 role secured as the second best option on the team. And Jalen Hyatt, who was drafted last year, that never really got a chance to showcase his talents because of the offensive line for the most part, but a real vertical threat who hasn't earned much playing time while Jones was healthy last year, but he should be a part of the mix this year. The Giants also generally ran the ball more than most teams when they had the lead, and they also ran more than most when they were playing from behind, and that is a large part due to having Saquon Barkley. Now Devin Singletary is at running back, and they're going to be asking Daniel Jones to do more of the carrying. This season, it's clear that the Giants are going to put things in Daniel Jones's hands to determine if he can be the future at the position for the New York Giants. They want an answer to that question at the end of this year. So this means that the former first-round pick should have more opportunities and better efficiency. The big concern is that neck injury that kept him out early last season, but a tore ACL kept him out for the rest of the campaign. The ACL tear may prevent Jones from running as much as we've seen him do it in the past few seasons, but it could hurt his fantasy value more than the new receivers help him. So you're still taking a gamble on Daniel Jones, but a top 10 quarterback, fantasy-wise, could be a really good situation for the Giants and our friend Bill. And Nash said Bill would be happy if he was here. He would be happy. I'm going to have to tag him on Twitter really quick. Hold on. I'm going to just comment on here. Bill Hartnett. I am currently talking about Daniel Jones. We'll see if Bill gets this. But yeah, Daniel Jones is a good fantasy pickup. He's a good sleeper for the late round. Let's talk about a couple other fantasy sleepers. And we're going to go with Drake May. Drake May, his average draft position right now is round 20 with the 4th pick. All right. So you're talking way down the draft board. Way down the draft board. And let's see really quick if I put this in. All right. Way down the draft board, Drake May, New England Patriots, average draft position, 20th round, 4th pick. Last season, both redraft and rookie draft, Bryce Young and Anthony Richardson had notably higher ADPs than CJ Stroud. This was because Young was the first overall pick in what we thought was a better situation, while Anthony Richardson had the rushing upside. Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels have relatively high ADPs this year, while Drake May's is significantly lower. While it makes sense to pick Williams and Daniels as early as they are going, there's at least a chance that May has the best season of the three, similar to how Stroud did last season. May was QB3 on our big board with our draft guide, concluding that Drake May has all the talent tools that you want to bet on as your franchise quarterback. A lot of May's ADP concerns revolve around his landing spot with the New England Patriots, but the team has undergone a lot of changes that could lead to the offense playing much better. Alex Van Pelt is the new offensive coordinator. The former quarterback was last offensive coordinator for the Cleveland Browns, where Baker Mayfield and Jacoby Brissett and Joe Flacco all managed passing grades in the 70s. Before working for the Browns, he was a quarterback coach for players like Aaron Rodgers and Andy Dalton. So that right there could just be systematically a good fit for Drake May. The Patriots had several wide receivers rotating in and out last season. One of them I really like that they drafted. I'm not talking about Jalen Polk. I am actually talking about the Javon Baker, who's not even listed on this list. I think he's going to be really, really good. Demario Douglas stood out among the group with a 74.4 PFF grade last year. Everyone else on the roster is expected to be a backup or off the roster as the team drafted new young talent and signed free agent KJ Osborne. They're both projected to start. The team also added Austin Hooper at tight end and Antonio Gibson at running back. And Antonio Gibson and Austin Hooper are both strong receivers. And here's the thing, though. There's a strong chance that Jacoby Brissett is going to start the season. I fully expect Jacoby Brissett to start the season. Jacoby Brissett has been taking all the first-team reps at practice, and people that are on the field for New England have come out and said that Jacoby Brissett is leading the Patriots offense, not just in the reps, but as a presence in the offense, while Drake May is working on fundamentals over in the corner. So Drake May is probably not going to start, but we can expect May to become the starter sooner rather than later. No one is picking a sleeper quarterback because they expect him to start. Sleeper quarterbacks are players who could potentially be fantasy starters over the second half of the season. That's why there was an exception made to Will Levis, because Will Levis is somebody that we know is going to start week 1 whose ADP is below 120. And that's also why we have our boy Bill in the chat. What's up, Bill? Fun fact, it's been 1 year since Twitter shy. Don't mind that. Hey, yo, we are here to rise in. Let's go. Fun fact, it's been 1 year since Twitter changed to X. Oh, man, a whole year. I've enjoyed the year. I haven't noticed the difference, but I'm a supporter of X. So, yeah, Bill, what you did miss, you got to rewind it after and look at the segment. I just talked about how Daniel Jones is a great sleeper pick for the quarterback position. And like the whole point of this is not that you're picking a sleeper quarterback hoping that he can start week 1. You're picking a sleeper quarterback that has the upside to be a top 10 quarterback, right? Kind of like CJ Stroud last year. You have the upside of a top 10 quarterback, but you're not necessarily going into the season relying on him. If you're picking another quarterback in round 10 and 11, see, you're not supposed to. Here's what you're not supposed to do. You're not supposed to say, hey, this guy is a sleeper quarterback. Let me pick him in the 6th round because he's valued. Let's say that's where his real value is. No. You're the only one that knows his real value. Give yourself the honor of drafting him in the 10th round. You earned it. No one else is going to draft him. You have the insight that no one else has, right? It's no longer a sleeper pick if you draft him in the 4th, 5th round. All right. And then you're putting way too many eggs in these baskets. These are players that are very low risk, very high upside. Daniel Jones, he was a top 10 quarterback fantasy-wise because of his rushing touchdowns and his rushing yards in 2022. This year, he's got a better set of weapons, better offensive line, and he's playing for his job. He has top 10 upside. Will Levis, he's starting week 1. You know what you're getting, right? He's going to start week 1. So if you find yourself late in the round and you somehow didn't get the quarterback you wanted and you're freaking out and you don't know what to do, Will Levis is somebody that you can at least draft and you know, okay, this guy's going to start every week. And then last but least, we have Drake May. And Bill said, I will. I guarantee it, as they say. DJ hit Hyatt in stride on a 60-yarder. I'm okay with that. I love to hear it. Today I was at the freaking football field playing, and I threw a football 50 yards today. I stood on the 50-yard line, and I threw it inside the touchdown. I was extremely proud of that. And I got a video I'm going to show you guys tomorrow I went into a sporting store and I had entirely too much fun. All right, so those are the quarterback positions. Now, let's roll into our sleeper running backs. And Bill, I don't know if you notice or not, but we did upgrade the camera, right? We updated the camera, and we now have a logo. We now have a logo in the video right there, NFL with Kyle. Let me do a quick poll. Do you think I should put the logo in the top right, the bottom right, or keep it in the bottom left? I could also put it in the top left. Just curious to know what you guys think as I had new stuff. But yeah, I think it looks a lot more clear, and hopefully you guys are enjoying that as well. So let's go into our running back. Okay, sleeper running back. These are 5 sleepers that have 120 plus ADP. So let's get into the running backs. Chuba Hubbard, Carolina. Average draft position right now is round 13, 12th pick. Hubbard was used in a variety of situations in his first 2 seasons. And I remember him coming in for Christian McCaffrey's injury and having really good seasons. Now, after Christian McCaffrey was traded, his role increased significantly for the 2023 season, playing at least 64% of his team's snaps in each of his last 7 games. He finished at least RB28 or better in each of those games, including 2 weeks as a top 12 running back. The Panthers added Jonathan Brooks in the draft, but he's coming off a torn ACL. A few weeks ago, it was reported that Brooks still has a way to go in his recovery. Ways to go. So if you're thinking, oh, Jonathan Brooks, he's going to be the starter week 1, you might be mistaken. Chuba Hubbard seems to be the guy in line to get the most snaps in this first year. So Hubbard has a decent chance to start early in the season, and the Panthers shouldn't rush Brooks. Hubbard is a great gamble late in the draft as someone capable of being a future back. Dave Canales, as the Panthers head coach, is also working in Hubbard's favor. The offense he's been a part of have produced fantasy starter seasons from Rachaad White, Kenneth Walker, Chris Carson, Marshawn Lynch. Those offenses have given running backs enough volume to rank in the top 20 most seasons, regardless of their talent. And it's possible for at least part of the season that Hubbard is going to see that type of volume. Look, I love this pick. Hubbard was heavily utilized last season. If you look at 2021 short yardage situation, snap rate, he was in 2021, he was on the field 57% of short yardage situations. In 2023, he was on the field for 74% of short yardage situations. And why that's so important is because touchdowns, of course, are 6 points. You can have a running back that gets a lot of yards, but then they put in another running back on the goal line, like Ezekiel Elliott. So you got a lot of running backs that if they don't score a touchdown, they bust. It's like touchdown or bust, right? Ezekiel Elliott's not going to get you 100 yards, but he could get you 2 rushing touchdowns and 24 yards. You get what I'm saying? So goal line snap rate is very, very important. And Chuba Hubbard went from a 64% goal line snap rate in 2021 to a 35% snap rate in 2022 to last year having an 81.5% snap rate on the goal line. That's a feature back. That's the number 1 back on the team. So the point is, if we don't see Jonathan Brooks on the field, Chuba Hubbard is going to be somebody that you're going to want to draft and flex immediately. If you can start a player that is going to be on the field for 80% of the snaps, you have to start that guy. Even if you flex him. And by the way, you can absolutely flex Chuba Hubbard because you're going to be able to draft him in the 10th, 11th round. So I love this pick. And then Bill said, I like it where it is. It covers the mic. That's exactly what I was thinking too. Nash got a thunderstorm rolling in for him. Be safe, buddy. All right. This pick I got some issues with, but I actually, I like the shout out here, but let's talk about it. Okay, this is fantasy football sleeper running back Jaleel McLaughlin out of the Denver Broncos. And Jaleel McLaughlin played, he was a surprising player last season. He was an undrafted free agent. Denver brought him in, and he had a ton of success when he was on the field. Now, here's the problem. He had such a poor pass protection grade on PFF that every time he came into the game, everybody knew, okay, hey, Jaleel McLaughlin is getting the ball. They're not passing it. They wouldn't have him in the game. He was that bad at pass protection that it made the Broncos one-dimensional when they used him. And then defenses were able to follow him, lock in on him, double cover him. And then they normally would force him the ball. It felt forced. And he would try to make an amazing play, but he would get, wrapped up. And it's just, it really just hurt him that defenses knew. Like if you have a 3-down back, the defense doesn't know if you're getting the ball or you're there for pass protection. But when you're really poor at something, the offense kind of knows. Just in the opposite way, running backs that are only good at pass protection, you kind of know when he runs into the game that he's just there to block. So Jaleel McLaughlin was the 6th highest graded running back last season with an 86.2 offensive grade. I do think that grade is misleading because he didn't get that many playing snaps. And actually, when you look at the PFF graded running backs, from most metrics that I've seen, he didn't play enough snaps to even qualify in the rankings. So I'm not sure where they're pulling the 6th highest graded running back from, because PFF actually has another section that goes against that. His yards per carry and avoided tackle rate were both top 10. I will say he had really good yards per carry, and he was really good at making people miss. He also led all running backs in targets per route, leading to top 10 yards per route run figure. Here's the thing. There wasn't much consistency in how the Broncos used their running backs from one week to another. McLaughlin was sued significantly early in the season, phased out in late November, and phased back in by mid-December. Samaje Perine played fewer snaps as the season progressed. There is a ton of talk of Javonte Williams having a better season, 1 year further removed from his injuries. I don't like this pick, Jaleel McLaughlin. I'm telling you, as a Broncos fan, the Broncos, Javonte Williams is supposed to be back, and they also drafted Audric Estime in the 5th round to complicate matters out of Notre Dame. The thinking is Javonte and Audric are going to be the 2 running backs. So I just don't see a ton of work for Jaleel McLaughlin. He's on the shorter side of running backs. He's 5'8", but the one thing going for him is that Sean Payton's no stranger to short running backs. The Saints had the 2nd most offensive snaps for running backs 5'9" or shorter over the last 15 seasons, including guys like Pierre Thomas, Mark Ingram, Darren Sproles. All 3 have multiple seasons where they've been fantasy starters. It's fine to take chances on Javonte Williams, McLaughlin, and Estime because someone is bound to have fantasy value this season. Especially, you saw the contract they just gave out to Quinn Meinerz. You still got not McLaughlin, McGlinchey. You still got Ben Powers. You still got Bowles. So the offensive line is actually pretty solid. So one of these running backs is going to pop. If I had a guess, I would say it's going to be Javonte Williams. It's certainly possible McLaughlin carves out a big role in the offense to consider starting him later in the season. But I have too many questions about Jaleel McLaughlin and the pass protection stuff. All right, but I did hear this. Sean Payton was asked about Jaleel McLaughlin, and he said he's the first guy in the building and the last one to leave. So there's a lot of players like this, especially undrafted free agents, that they got here. They had to steal first base. They had to steal base to get in this situation. They work harder. They stay longer. And I think if Jaleel McLaughlin can really get better at that one aspect of his game, he could see a lot more volume. And we do know that when he does get the ball, he's very effective. So if he gets more volume, all of a sudden he has massive upside. The question is he going to be improved enough to get that volume? Our next running back that we are going to say is a sleeper is Bucky Irving from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Bucky was selected with the 125th pick in the draft. And he honestly had one of the best landing spots for a rookie running back. 10 running backs were selected in the first 4 rounds, but some of the landing spots were the Miami Dolphins, the 49ers, the Cardinals, the Jets, the Rams. All 5 teams had running backs who ranked in the top 10 in PFF offensive grades last season. The Eagles and the Packers added big-name running backs in free agency who were at one point top 3 running backs in PFF. The Packers running back, Josh Jacobs, led the NFL in rushing yards, not last year, but the year before. This leaves Jonathan Brooks to the Carolina Panthers, Ray Davis to the Buffalo Bills, and Irving to the Bucs as the only running backs drafted anywhere close to a good landing spot. Chuba Hubbard and James Cook were among the top 16 rushing grade last season. This leaves Irving as the starting running back with the least competition for a potential starting job, right? So there's a really good angle at this where, hey, Rachaad White wasn't good enough last season. All these other running backs, they got to compete. They're going to have to battle. A lot of them aren't going to get that kind of volume. But if Bucky Irving is better than Rachaad White, even in the preseason, he's going to definitely get the most production. So the fact is Bucky Irving could be somebody that you draft 125 overall that could be starting every single week if he appears to be better than Rachaad White early in the season. Rachaad White put up plenty of fantasy production last season, but his 68.8 rushing grade was actually the 11th lowest among 53 running backs with at least 300 snaps. Most of the bottom 10 are set for a decline in snaps this season, including 2 unsigned free agents. The Buccaneers' other backups, Chase Edmonds and Sean Tucker, didn't play much at all last season. This means Irving could have the second best odds outside of Brooks to win his team's starting job without any injuries among the rookie class. I love this pick. I think Bucky Irving is a solid, low-risk, high-upside pick, and you definitely want to pick him. He could do for you what was it? The running back out of the Rams, Williams, starts with a D. Blanking on his name. Kyren Williams. Kyren Williams. That's the type of pick we're talking about right here. Okay? A 5th round running back. You like the pick. Next up, we have a Kansas City Chief. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And Nash says, it's a big thunderstorm, but I'm not going to get directly hit. Good. Glad to hear that. Let us know that you're good. All right, so these last 2 sleepers are handcuffs who aren't getting enough attention. They won't have fantasy value unless their starter gets injured, but the backup could have significant value. So let's talk about Edwards-Helaire, who lost the starting job in Kansas City to Isaiah Pacheco, who they drafted, I believe, in the 7th round. But even when Pacheco was injured for parts of last season, Edwards-Helaire split time with Jerick McKinnon. The veteran running back has plenty of experience on early downs, and there have been times where McKinnon was the backup early down instead of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. McKinnon is now 32 years old, and the Chiefs opted to not re-sign him, at least to this point. The only other options on the depth chart are veterans Konate Ingram and sophomore Deneric Prince, both of whom spent the 2023 season on the Chiefs practice squad. So what we're talking about right now is that last year Clyde Edwards-Helaire had to split that RB2 position with another player that is no longer on the team. Should anything happen to Isaiah Pacheco, or even Isaiah Pacheco misses he has a sprained ankle and he misses a couple weeks, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be the clear RB2 on the team. well, he's going to turn into an RB1. He'll be an RB2 all season. So Edwards-Helaire should have a feature role in Kansas City if Pacheco gets hurt at any point. This is somebody that you want to add on your team, especially the Chiefs offense. You know that if Clyde Edwards-Helaire has to take over starting duties, he's going to be an immediate starter for your fantasy team. And he is someone that you can draft in the 18th round. All right. Next up, we have Tank Bigsby out of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Tank Bigsby. Bigsby was the talk of training camp, but few major errors prevented him from being a major part of the offense. He dropped 3 of 5 targets, all 3 of which flew up into the air after bouncing off his hands. 2 of the 3 resulted in interceptions. He also picked up a fumble after Trevor Lawrence was hit while throwing the ball. He seemed to think it was an incomplete pass, allowing the defense to force the fumble, resulting in a defensive touchdown. In the run game, he lost the fumble on one of his 51 attempts. So Tank Bigsby, major errors in the offseason so far. But the one bright spot is that he was an effective short yardage runner when given the opportunity, converting 9 of 11 first downs when he needed 1 or 2 yards compared to just a 58% rate from Travis Etienne. The good news for him is that in 2024, the game is starting to slow down for him, which should help him with ball security issues. Etienne was a feature back for much of the first half of the season, but he was rotated out a lot more in the second half. They intend to reduce his workload again in 2024, which should give Bigsby plenty of opportunities. And we've heard a lot about this. Etienne was overworked, overtasked, overcarried, and the Jaguars, even Doug Peterson has come out and said that we have to have him resting. He can't get that type of a workload. And how do they do that? By elevating Tank Bigsby. It's unlikely that Bigsby will see enough playing time normally to warrant being a fantasy starter, but there's at least a chance if he's more consistent, takes short yardage situations, particularly at the goal line. Bigsby's primarily on this list because he could be a feature back if Etienne were to suffer any type of injury. This is just another insurance draft pick, right? That's kind of what your sleeper picks are. That's what you're doing late in the draft. You got to think, okay, who can I get the most value out of potentially when there's only guys like Tank Bigsby, Jaleel McLaughlin on the board? These are the guys that you want to add on your team late in the draft. So we did quarterbacks, we did running backs, and now we move to wide receivers. Let's do it. Wide receivers are fun. I'll tell you right off the bat that I normally do this. I pick running back, running back, running back, and then I pick my first wide receiver. I never land a guy like Justin Jefferson because I'm never willing to draft a wide receiver in the 3rd round or until my 3rd pick. I'm just not. And I'll explain it like this, okay? If you have, let's say there's 10 running backs in the league that will get you 20 points every single week, okay? But then there's a huge drop-off at that point where then your running backs, 20 and below are only getting you 10 points. That's a 10-point gap between the top 10 running backs and then the bottom 10 or the number 10 through number 20. Wide receiver is different, where your average wide receiver, let's say, gets you between 18 and 20 points, but you have maybe 40 wide receivers that can get you that kind of production. So you can afford to wait to get your wide receiver. Yeah, maybe Justin Jefferson gets you 28 points per game, but maybe you can draft a receiver later that gets you 24 points a game. So that's a 4-point differential, whereas the running back can be a 10-point differential. It's just a bigger drop-off in points per position per round. It's simple. It's simple math. So I love the wide receiver position. I normally wait until round 4, round 5 to address it. But these are the players that you can get if you forget to draft a wide receiver and you find yourself in the 7th round. Number 1, Curtis Samuel. Curtis Samuel. And Curtis Samuel has played 7 seasons in the NFL, but he's still only 28 years old this season. And he's by far in the best situation of his entire career. Samuel spent his first 2 seasons as a backup with the Panthers until becoming a full-time starter in 2019, where he was the second option behind DJ Moore. In 2020, the Panthers added Chosen Henderson, relegating Samuel to the slot. Samuel signed with the Commanders in 2021, where he was their slot receiver. Samuel was consistently graded well. None of his stats particularly stand out, but they do range from okay to good. The situations he's been in have never been great. In Carolina, his quarterback was mostly Cam Newton, Teddy Bridgewater, and Kyle Allen. In Washington, it was Taylor Heineke, Sam Howell, and Carson Wentz. He never had a quarterback with a PFF passing grade above 60 in Washington. And his best quarterback in Carolina was Newton with a 70 passing grade. So Josh Allen is going to be a huge step up compared to everything that Samuel has experienced in the NFL so far. And you might actually get to see a side of Samuel that we haven't seen yet. Samuel has a chance to be the top wide receiver option in Buffalo. His primary competition comes from Khalil Shakir and the second-round rookie Keon Coleman. All three have a similar ADP. While Samuel is known as a slot receiver, he's graded better when he's lined up outside, 74.8 versus 66.6. With more yards per route run versus 147 versus 126, and a higher target rate, 20% versus 17. The Bills also tend to move their wide receivers around a lot last season, so Samuel should line up all over the Bills' formation. One of the 3 wide receivers is definitely going to be a steal. And given the quality of the Bills' offense in the past, possibly 2 of them will be a steal. I'd give Samuel the edge over Shakir based on his production. Without Allen, compared to Shakir's production with Allen and Coleman, it's simply harder to draft as most rookies are. You just don't know what you're going to get with a rookie. We at least know that Curtis Samuel, we know what we're going to get, and it's possible we get his best season so far. That's why Samuel is the top sleeper pick from this wide receiver group. I mean, you're talking about Josh Allen's number 1 wide receiver, and you're drafting him in the 11th round. You got to love that. You got to love that. Up next, and you guys probably aren't going to like this pick, Jerry Jones said all offseason that we're going all in. And they haven't really done anything. And you wonder who they're going to throw the ball to. Well, Brandon Cooks is going to be the guy. And it's funny that everybody's like, oh, Brandon Cooks, that's who you're going with? Look, Cooks was a top 20 fantasy wide receiver 6 times over a 7-season stretch from 2015 to 2021. He was often helped by his quarterback play from Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Jared Goff, Deshaun Watson. Even in 2021 with Davis Mills, he finished in the top 20. But in 2022, injuries took their toll, and he wasn't scoring touchdowns on the second lowest scoring offense. Last season, he joins the Cowboys. But it took time before he really clicked in the offense. He was inactive week 2 and helped to 50 receiving yards or less in each game over the first half of the season. But the second half of the season is why we're looking at it, right? Big sample size. 6 seasons straight as a top 20 wide receiver, deals with injuries in 2021, has a slow first half of the season for the Cowboys, but then it clicks. He breaks out in the second half of the season with a 9-catch, 173-yard performance. From that point on, he was consistently playing at least 70% of Dallas's snaps. He went from wide receiver 14 from week 10 until the end of the season, while his teammate CeeDee Lamb was wide receiver 1 by a wide margin. Cooks has remained a wide receiver who's pretty good at everything outside of shorter routes, and the Cowboys will likely need Cooks more this season than last. Dallas allowed Tony Pollard and Michael Gallup to leave in free agency and didn't bring in any notable pass catchers. I think a big part of that is based on how they feel about Brandon Cooks and the role that they expect him to play. He's pretty unlikely to finish as a top 10 wide receiver, given Lamb's target share and some of his fantasy production came from touchdown luck. But there is a strong case for him to be a fantasy starter if he builds off of what he did at the second half of last season. He caught at least 5 passes in each of his last 3 games, including the playoffs, after accomplishing that just once in his first 16 weeks. So there was 32.6% of all routes he was lined up in the slot. Expect him to be available late in your draft pick, and you're just hoping, hey, this guy can build off of what we saw him do at the second half of last season. Bill said, I'm going to get some rain and maybe some thunder at 12 to 1:15 a.m. Central Time. That's not nothing to worry about, just a little rain. Coming up next, we have Jalen Polk, New England Patriots, the wide receiver out of Washington. Polk was the 10th wide receiver selected during the 2024 draft, 11th on our big board heading into the draft, but 13th by consensus ADP behind receivers like Roman Wilson and Jermaine Burton. Unlike Wilson and Burton, along with multiple others ahead, Polk has a chance to be the top wide receiver on his team. The Patriots had 7 different receivers with at least 100 snaps last season, but nobody had any snaps above 600. The only departure is Devontae Parker, who led the group in snaps last season, while adding KJ Osborne in free agency and Javon Baker in the 4th round. I still like Javon Baker. I think Javon Baker is going to be solid. The early indication is Osborne is at the top of the depth chart. Douglas is likely to be in the slot position, with Polk as the other current favorite to start. Douglas played very well considering he was a 6th-round rookie last season, but at 5'8", it's unlikely he'll see as many snaps in 12 personnel as last season, now that the team has better options. The Patriots offense isn't expected to be great next season, but you do have a chance to pick up someone who should be their team's top wide receiver by the middle of the season. It's definitely worth the pick. And we did the quarterback position already, and who did we have on that list? Drake May. If Drake May comes in and surprises everybody, kind of like CJ Stroud did, they're both ranked around the same place at this time of year. Jalen Polk is going to benefit massively from that. So if you really want to go all in on your fantasy sleepers, draft Drake May and Jalen Polk and just keep that upside on your bench. Of course, these aren't starters, and unless they are, and then you'll be happy you drafted them. But the fact of the matter is you can pick these guys up so late in your draft. By the time you draft these players, most people have put on auto draft. I hate auto draft. I'll never auto draft. You can get value up until your very last pick. Auto draft is for people that don't really know what they're doing. Next up for our sleeper wide receiver, okay, Michael Wilson, Arizona Cardinals, ADP round 16, 8th pick. Wilson was a 3rd-round pick by the Cardinals last season and was immediately put in as their Z receiver. He had a slow start in week 1, leading to a reduction of playing time, but he rebounded in week 2, leading to his playing time getting restored, and he was wide receiver 40 from weeks 2 through 8. He accomplished this despite having Joshua Dobbs as his quarterback. Michael Wilson suffered a shoulder injury, causing him to miss week 9, and then he re-aggravated the injury in week 11. He also suffered a neck injury. He returned for the last 4 weeks of the regular season, and he was held without a catch in his 2 games back. Not only was he returning from injury, but this was also his first opportunity to play with Kyler Murray, who came back from his injury. Things with Murray clicked over the last 2 weeks of the season. He was wide receiver 16 from week 17 to 18. So think about this for a second. Michael Wilson, somebody that they drafted, feeling good about that, 3rd-round pick, dealing with inconsistent offense with quarterback problems, and then all of a sudden Kyler Murray comes in, and you get a glimpse at what Michael Wilson and Kyler Murray could be. And he was wide receiver 16. This reminds me of Nico Collins, kind of just how he emerged onto the scene. And people are like, who's Nico Collins? Well, Nico Collins is CJ Stroud's favorite wide receiver. Michael Wilson could very well emerge. Of course, you got Marvin Harrison Jr. there. But if Arizona's offense is really going, and they also have Trey Benson, Michael Wilson could be the wide receiver too, with big upside. With big upside. The Cardinals replaced Hollywood Brown with Marvin Harrison Jr., traded away Rondell Moore, their slot receiver, and they added Zay Jones, who can back up Harrison, Wilson, and Greg Dortch in the slot. This means that Wilson's role in the Cardinals offense should remain similar to last season, but the exciting part about Wilson this season, outside of his health, is that he was more of a deeper threat. His 14.1 yard average depth of target was among a top 10 wide receiver last season who ran 400 routes. With Brown off the roster, he could see even more deep threats or more deep targets. Murray has the third highest accuracy percentage among quarterbacks on deep passes over the last 4 seasons among those with 50 or more deep ball attempts. So right now we're just talking about a really good fit. What the quarterback does well, the wide receiver happens to do well. This is a niche, right? You got to have your niche. This is Michael Wilson's niche. He can be one of the best deep ball receivers in the league. He's also the most consistent on accurate plus throws, or throws where the pass is perfectly accurate or away from coverage. Every indication is that Marvin Harrison Jr. is the safest wide receiver picked in a long time, but there is a chance he doesn't work out immediately or he suffers an injury. That alone makes Wilson an interesting option late in the draft. But even if that doesn't happen, Wilson should still outperform his ADP where it stands right now. Michael Wilson, somebody that you want to draft late in your fantasy round. Coming up next, we got Devontae Walker. 29 of the 32, and Devontae Walker plays for the Baltimore Ravens. Okay. 29 of the 32 receivers projected to be the X on their team have an ADP in the top 175 using the consensus ADP. One expectation is that Devontae Walker is going to come in and play really, really good right off the bat because Zay Flowers is going to hold down the Z receiver role while Nelson Aguilar is in the slot. Rashad Bateman rotated with Odell Beckham last season as the X receiver. Odell Beckham Jr. is gone. Todd Monken was among the top 5 play callers in keeping wide receivers in their typical role, with either Bateman or Beckham often on the field, and rarely both were on the field at the same time. If their fantasy production has been combined last season, they would have been wide receiver 35. Bateman was given a contract extension with high expectations from his season. Given 3 years of disappointing fantasy results and PFF grades, it would be understandable that some might not be high on Bateman given his history. In that case, Devontae Walker could be worth a late round filler in deeper leagues. The 4th round rookie has the measurables that more closely resemble an X receiver. Our grades mentioned that Walker was not polished in 2022 or 23, but if he develops a lot in the next 2 months, he could take over as the X receiver and be a great late round steal. I love this pick. Devontae Walker, Baltimore Ravens offense that's going to be good. No Odell Beckham. There's never, the receivers for the Ravens, they're going to get touchdowns. They're going to get yards. If Devontae Walker comes in and takes that starting job, you're looking at what Zay Flowers was to the Ravens last year. Devontae Walker could be to the Ravens this year, right? I still think Zay Flowers is the clear number 1 guy, and he's going to have an even better year. But how Zay Flowers really got going in the middle of the season to late in the season, expect Devontae Walker to fill that role. So definitely worth a late round filler in deeper leagues. Devontae Walker, somebody you want on your bench. So that is our wide receivers. So we did Jalen Polk out of New England, Curtis Samuel playing with Josh Allen, potentially taking the number 1 job, Brandon Cooks, who had a really good second half of the season, and the Cowboys didn't do anything to address the position. and Michael Wilson from the Arizona Cardinals, and Devontae Walker for the Baltimore Ravens. And now, froze there for a second. And now we go to the tight end position, Bill's favorite position in all of sports, the tight end position. Okay. Once again, these are players who have an ADP outside of 120. That's the criteria that's needed in order to be considered a sleeper. All right. Tennessee's tight end is extremely hard to pronounce. Chigoziem Akanuo, Tennessee Titans. Right now, his ADP is in the 17th round. Tight end is the position in fantasy where talent and fantasy production most closely align. Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Mark Andrews have ranked top 6 in fantasy points per game each of the past 5 years. And they're also the 3 highest graded tight ends in that time frame. So let me say this one more time because I really think this nails the position. Tight end is the position in fantasy where talent and fantasy production most closely align, meaning you have a high PFF grade, you're going to have a high fantasy production grade. Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Mark Andrews all ranked top 6 in fantasy points per game in each of the past 5 years, and they were also the 3 highest graded tight ends. Darren Waller, Dallas Goedert, and TJ Hawkinson are 3 of the other 4 tight ends with a PFF grade above 80. And there are other 3 tight ends to finish top 12 in fantasy points per game in 4 of the last 5 seasons. If a tight end has the talent, he should perform well regardless of the situation that he's in. Of the 17 highest graded tight ends of the last 2 seasons, 14 had an ADP of 128 or better. And there's a large gap after that. The other 2 tight ends with an ADP in that range are Brock Bowers, who's a rookie, and Dalton Kincaid, who would have fit that category if you ignored his slow start to the rookie year. The 3 tight ends who graded well but don't have an ADP in the top 128 are Darren Waller, who's retired now, Gerald Everett, who is now a 30-year-old backup with the Chicago Bears, and Chigoziem Okonua for the Titans. Okonua made several plays as a rookie that led to more playing time in his sophomore year. He wasn't nearly as efficient, leading to tight end 21 performance. He will be 25 years old this year, which is right around the time that tight ends peak. He has a new head coach in Brian Callahan, who doesn't have much of a history with successful fantasy tight ends. But given Okunawa's talent, it's better to pick him than Juwan Johnson or Tyler Conklin, who might be better, who might be in better situations, but they have more limited upsides. I mean, the Tennessee's doesn't have that clear tight end number 1. This is supposed to be that guy. And if Brian Callahan has the offense moving, there's a lot of upside with this pick. Next up, we have a player that you might have forgotten about, but he's not that old, even though it feels like he is. Somebody that's only been in the league for, 2020, I believe? Maybe 2017, 2016? No. He was drafted in 2015. So 9 years. 9 years. It's Zach Ertz, who is now with the Washington Commanders. Ertz once belonged in the conversation among the best fantasy tight ends in the entire NFL. From 2015 to 2019, he consistently gained at least 70 receptions for 800 yards. After a down 2020, he was traded to the Cardinals during the 2021 season, where he finished as a top 12 fantasy tight end in fantasy points per game in both 2021 and 2022. So he has a down year. They kick him to the curb, and then he has 2 top 12 fantasy seasons with the Cardinals. Ertz played 7 games in 2023, but he suffered a quad strain and didn't return that season. He was also starting to get phased out by Trey McBride, which is understandable considering how well McBride played, but Ertz has since signed with the Commanders, reuniting him with Cliff Kingsbury, who was his head coach with the Cardinals and now's the Commanders' offensive coordinator. There's a lot working against Ertz considering that he's 33 years old, still not that old for a tight end. His recent injury history and the fact that Washington drafted a potential replacement in Ben Sinnott in the second round. It's hard to imagine anyone with this low of an ADP to be a top 6 fantasy tight end, but there is a path for Ertz to get there. He just needs to stay healthy, hold off Sinnott, and father time for a season and play as well as he did the last time Kingsbury was calling the plays for them. This is one of those picks where you're just loving that the offensive coordinator has a history with a specific player. Zach Ertz, you're just betting that he still has a top 12 season in the tank and that he can hold off the rookie. Zach Ertz is definitely going to be available really late. He's definitely worth a late round pick. And lastly, for the tight end position, we have Colby Parkinson, Los Angeles Rams. The majority of teams are sticking with the same tight end or two as last season, which could lead to the fantasy leaderboard looking very similar as it did last season. Most of the teams who have changed their leading receiving tight end are going with an experienced option, including Ertz to the Commanders, Mike Gesicki to the Bengals, Jonnu Smith to the Dolphins, Hayden Hurst, and Will Dissly to the Chargers. All have had some level of fantasy success before, and there's a chance they can repeat it. But outside of Ertz, there's a very low chance of an elite season. Parkinson is the biggest unknown out of all the potential fantasy starters. The 25-year-old tight end spent the last 4 years with the Seahawks, where he started 4th on the depth chart, moved his way up to 2nd last season, but was always part of a heavy rotation of tight ends in Seattle, including Noah Fant. Tyler Higbee has been the Rams tight end for several years, but dealt with multiple injuries in 2023, and he'll be 32 years old before the season is done. The Rams gave Parkinson one of the most surprising contracts of free agency with a practically 2-year, $22.5 million contract with $15.5 million guaranteed. He's making more money than half of the starting tight ends in the NFL. But so is Higbee, who is on the Rams as well. While Parkinson has performed decently well in some specific situations, nothing has indicated he's ready for fantasy stardom outside of the contract. While most of this article is focused on the tight ends with the talent to potentially be fantasy starters, for Parkinson, it's a combination of the contract while his talent is much of an unknown. It can be better to draft Parkinson over some players who have been around the league for years and consistently are in top 12 fantasy tight ends. After week 1 or potentially earlier, we'll know if he's earned enough playing time to remain on your fantasy roster. The fact of the matter is, you have to justify paying people a certain dollar amount. And the Rams offered Colby Parkinson that type of money. So you also have to take into account who selected him, who wanted him. Sean McVay, one of the best offensive callers in the league, one of the best evaluators of talent in the league. So you're pretty much just betting on the fact that the Rams are betting on him. Okay. And if this was like the Browns or the Raiders, one of those teams that consistently makes bad decisions, I would say that's not worth anything. But the fact of the matter is the Rams rarely make bad decisions, especially when it comes to paying their players. They see something in Colby Parkinson, and if they see it, they're going to put him on the field. They're going to try to put the ball in his hands. And if that's going to be the case, he could be worth a late round filler on your fantasy roster. So that is the quarterback, wide receiver, tight end, and tight end, wide receiver, running back, quarterback. Those are your fantasy sleepers. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. We did our episode on Friday with Jordan Love and Tua Tagovailoa getting their contracts. Definitely give those a listen if you haven't checked them out yet as well. Just some quick news. The Patriots defensive lineman Christian Barmore treated for blood clots. He has no timetable for his return. We're seeing a lot of people blood clots. New England Patriots defensive lineman Christian Barmore was diagnosed and treated for blood clots over the weekend, the team announced today. The Patriots released a statement following their training camp practice, adding that there was no timeline for when Barmore would be able to return to football activities. Over the weekend, he was diagnosed with blood clots, the statement read. He was appropriately treated by the doctors at Mass General Brigham, who tested, evaluated, and treated him. Our principal concern is that this time is Christian's health and well-being. Fortunately, Mass General Brigham provides some of the best healthcare in the world. While there's no current timetable for his return, we know Christian is getting tremendous care, and we look forward to his full recovery. He turns 25 on Sunday. He was a second-round pick by the Patriots in the 2021 draft, and he signed a 4-year, $83 million extension this year. So hopefully he gets better fast. Hopefully, it's nothing too serious and he's able to get back on the field. Cowboys defensive end Sam Williams. This is a really tough blow right here. Suffers a torn ACL in practice. It happens every single offseason. You just never know who it's going to be. Defensive end Sam Williams suffers a torn ACL in his left knee during practice. An MRI confirmed it. Ian Rappaport and Tom Pelissero reported it. Williams also sustained a torn MCL and will be placed on season-ending injured reserve, the team announced today. Williams was engaging in a block during special teams drill before falling to the ground and grabbing his left knee. He was carted off the field, and the MRI gave us the results. Williams was a 2022 second-round pick for the Cowboys, and he was set to enter his third season. Williams was yet again set to be a valued member of the pass rushing rotation with DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons. Through 2 seasons, the 25-year-old has played in 32 games, coming off of the bench to provide plenty of punch with his 8.5 career sacks, 16 quarterback hits, 15 tackles for a loss, and 48 tackles. So far, the Cowboys' offseason and training camp has been rife with off-field drama, such as CeeDee Lamb's holdout, Dak Prescott entering his final season, Jerry Jones' daughter, estranged daughter. Just a lot of weird stuff going on. Unfortunately, Williams' injury has given the Cowboys a far more difficult on-field issue to overcome than the other ones. So Sam Williams out for the season for the Dallas Cowboys. The Rams have adjusted Matthew Stafford's contract, and Matthew Stafford agreed to terms on the adjusted contract, and the contract adjustment is now settled. Stafford's adjusted deal will pay him more money this season and increase his roster bonus next offseason. Stafford will receive $5 million more upfront in 2024, money that was pushed up from a later contract year, and will bump his 2025 roster bonus from $5 million to $9 million. The Rams did not extend Stafford's 4-year deal that he signed initially in 2022 for $160 million. That contract still runs through the 2026 season. Stafford, who is 36 years old, had expressed to the Rams his desire to add more guaranteed money to the contract he signed months after leading the Rams to a Super Bowl title, and appeared poised to hold out or hold in, only participating in individual drills. Prior to the contract being reworked on Friday morning, the Rams camp opened up last Tuesday, so Stafford was not going to be practicing. He was going to hold in, hold out, whatever you want to call it. But this was something that was going on that was kind of quietly behind the scenes, and the Rams were able to get it done. Stafford finished strong last season after initially struggling and suffering a thumb injury that cost him to miss 1 start. He threw for 16 touchdowns and only 4 interceptions in his final 7 games, helping vault the Rams into the postseason, nearly leading a playoff upset over his former team. That game against the Lions was absolutely epic. I expect big things out of the Rams. Matthew Stafford is happy. That's what's best for everybody around the Rams. There was Purdy aiming for the Tom Brady kind of feeling in year 3. The 49ers are juggling contract demands from a few players who have been staying off the field with training camp underway. On the field, Brock Purdy seeking to refine his killer instinct. The third-year quarterback enters training camp coming off his first full healthy offseason to prepare as San Francisco's starter, and he's eager to build up that by turning in even more dominance than the Niners did in 2023. This is what was said. With as good of a team that we have, I want to get to that point where we go into the third quarter. There's a couple of drives that are crucial. I'm on top of my stuff. We convert third downs, we score touchdowns, and the lead just gets out of hand, Purdy told San Francisco's Chronicle's Michael Silver. It's having that Tom Brady kind of feeling late in the game. It always felt like Tom was just going to take over and not make it close. I feel like I can get to that. It's been difficult to improve on the dominance Purdy and company put on display last season when they went 12-5, finished with the NFC's top seed, and reached the Super Bowl. The team's 193-plus point differential trailed only the Baltimore Ravens and the Dallas Cowboys, and 11 of its 12 regular season victories were by multiple possessions. So Purdy just basically wanting to do more of what they did last year. Purdy himself threw 4,280 yards, 31 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions, leading the league with a 7.0 touchdown percentage, 9.6 yards per attempt, 113.0 passer rating, and a 72.8 QBR. So anybody saying that Brock Purdy just throws quick balls to Brandon Ayuk or hands it off to Deebo Samuel, tell him that Brock Purdy led the league in yards per attempt. Simply not true. It's the close losses and the narrow playoff wins that have probably stuck in Purdy's head across the last several months. The 49ers required a comeback in both their divisional round win and their NFC Championship victory against the Lions. In the Super Bowl, San Francisco held a fourth quarter lead and lost it to the Chiefs. I want to be dominant, Purdy said, not just win games and feel like, I want to be dominant with consistent decisions and feeling like we're the top dogs every day. There were moments last year where I would just go, I don't know what it was in that situation, but we'd be up and it's all right. Be smart with the ball, or let's just make sure we don't mess it up. I want to break through that and get to this point of just being dominant for four quarters. That's my mindset. So he's just talking simply about when you're up so many possessions, you're in the third quarter, you're in this mindset like, okay, let's be smart with the ball. Let's not do anything to lose the game. He's saying, from what I'm understanding, Brock Purdy is saying, I don't want to go out in the second half with the mindset of not losing the game. I want to go out with the mindset of winning the game. I want to break through that kind of thinking, and I want to be dominant in the second half. The 49ers have some work to do to ensure that Brandon Ayuk, who's currently holding in, and Trent Williams is holding out Trent Williams. He's kind of earned the holdout. As of Sunday, hopefully those two can return to the fold, but the team has the same core players as it did during last season's run. Purdy, with a story much like Brady's as the late player picked in 2022's draft, knows mutilating his late game shut the door ways will require consistency from the entire team. It's football, he said, and for four quarters, man, we got to have that bloody mindset and going and taking it every down, every series, every rep. And it is exciting with Brock Purdy getting his first opportunity to have a full offseason with the 49ers if he can take another leap. I mean, he had a great season, led the NFL in many categories, 4,280 yards, 31 touchdowns. But Brock Purdy not satisfied and wants to go out there and have a much better season. Brock Purdy could be a really good fantasy pickup as well. Mike McDaniel was asked about Tua Tagovailoa's extension, and this is what he said. Tua has been dodged by critics over his play and availability through his career, and has come out on the other side with the contract to prove he's the Dolphins franchise quarterback. As always, the real work is ahead, something that Mike McDaniel made clear through Sunday's news conference. It's a pretty hot place to be a quarterback in the National Football League. McDaniel said of the heightened expectations that will follow Tua's extension. You get a lot of reps at seeing how people respond to things. I think that's absolutely the nature that you should expect, and something that I know Tua is very, very aware of. I think that's one of the cool things about sports is Tua can know that. His teammates can know that, and they have already taken the pressure and the expectations for themselves. So they accept the expectations, they accept the pressure. Just as long as you acknowledge that, which quite frankly, Tua has shown me that throughout the entire offseason, that he knows what time it is. Fortunately, him and all of his teammates can go out and determine whatever the narrative is built upon by the way they play. We focus on the way we play, understanding that we will always hear about the results, regardless of what they are. So why don't we try to move the needle on what those results are? And the fact of the matter is, a lot of people that didn't want Tua to get this contract, it was because of the performance he had in the playoffs against the Chiefs. So it sounds like his head coach, Mike McDaniel, is making it clear, hey, you control the narrative. You know that you have the pressure. You accept that pressure. Now, you acknowledged it. Now go out there and move the needle. Make the narrative whatever you want it to be. But you got to win playoff games and hopefully get to a Super Bowl. Such an emphasis on rewriting the narrative surrounding Miami stems directly from the team's inability to finish stretch runs down and during the Mike McDaniels Tua Tagovailoa partnership. Tagovailoa was serviceable but underwhelming for a number 5 overall pick through his first 2 seasons without his current coach. He went 13-8 as a starter with 4,467 yards, 27 touchdowns, and 15 interceptions in 23 games. He had more passing yards last season than he had his first 2 seasons without Mike McDaniels. McDaniel's arrival, paired with the trade for superstar Tyreek Hill, proved to be the catalyst for Tua's takeoff. It's part of why 2 years into their team-up, McDaniels put in an extra effort to get Tua's deal finished. I think it says a lot, Tua said in his post-practice news conference about McDaniel's push for him. Words get around quick, and I don't think he knows that I know, but I've been told by several birdies that are here in the facility and upstairs as well that he went to bat for me every day when I went out in practice, 11 on 11, 7 on 7. Before we went on that little break, that he went to bat for me with our owner. I won't go into the details of the things that I heard or the things that were said, but just know that he is what he says. He says what he told me, and he did what I was thinking he would do for me, and not just for me, but any other player. I'm very grateful for that. So there is this partnership between Tua and Mike McDaniels where, you know, there's a lot of coaches that say, oh, those decisions, they go on up there. Those aren't my decisions. Not Mike McDaniel. Mike McDaniel was up there talking to the owners, talking to the GM, saying, hey, we got to get a contract done. This is our quarterback. And I'm wondering how Tua is going to respond to that. Obviously, here he responds really well, but I'm talking about his performance response, right? In 2022, Tua threw for 3,548 yards, 2022, and 25 touchdowns and 8 interceptions, while leading the league with 105 passer rating during his first season under Mike McDaniel. He dealt with injuries, all the concussions. He missed 4 games, though a common refrain during his time in Miami to that point. But he rectified that last year in his first full season, a campaign in which he threw an NFL high 4,600 yards and set a career best 29 touchdowns to 14 interceptions. And that performance is what led to his recent 4-year, $212.4 million payday with incentives that can get him up to $55.5 million per year, which is where the top quarterbacks are. Tagovailoa is pumping up the crowd on Sunday's practice, including a "show me the money" quote. So Tua having a good time with this new contract. Good vibes around Miami. The Dolphins have nonetheless stumbled late in each past 2 years. as they did so in 2022, losing 5 of their final 6 games to finish 9-8. It could partly be explained away by Tua missing time. However, last season he was there and they went 2-3 to see the AFC East title slip away at the end and then fell out of the wild card weekend for a second straight year. With Tua having earned the long-term nod from team's brass, he and the rest of the squad must make finishing soft the newest storyline to erase under McDaniels. Now that all of this is done and this is behind us, we know heavy is the crown, Tua said. Whoever's wearing that, right now I'm the highest paid employee in this office. I got to get my whatever together. Got to get that right and get our guys moving in the right direction that we need to go. So Tua's already saying, look, you paid me like the team franchise quarterback. I understand what that role entails. And now that you are paying me that kind of money, I'm going to get my shit together. I'm going to get our guys moving in the direction we need to go. We have not completed our job. Their ability to reach their ultimate goal will define the rest of both Tua's and McDaniel's tenure. There's people that could be, a head coach of a team and lose a ton of games, McDaniel said. You have to wait and be successful, And I knew that the very first day I got the job. And so whatever is coming with whatever narrative and extracurricular thing doesn't really bother me. Team success obviously won't fall solely on the quarterback and head coach. Miami also made improvements around them by taking a chance on Odell Beckham Jr. and signing veterans for new defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver's operation, like linebacker Jordan Brooks and safety Jordan Poyer. They'll simply be the ones most prominent, highlighted for the results still to come. Both the good and the bad, which makes Tua's deal the starting point rather than the ending. It's maybe a handshake and a smile, McDaniels said, regarding the aftermath of extending his quarterback. But it's not a celebration. A handshake and a smile, but it's not a celebration. And I thought that was a very good summary of this whole entire situation between McDaniels and Tua. It's like they're both like, hey, I'm glad that this is behind us, but if we don't win a playoff game, if we don't get to where we need to be, this deal's not going to not look good when we look back upon it. Let's make sure that we write the narrative that we want. And in a way, Mike McDaniel's legacy is tied to Tua, because not only if Tua goes out there and loses another playoff game, is it going to look like Mike McDaniel can't win in the playoffs? But now that Mike McDaniel went to bat for Tua, it kind of puts that extra pressure on himself, right? Because if Tua goes out there and has a shitty game in the postseason, the front office is like, this is the guy that Mike McDaniel wanted. It's just extra pressure. But I think Mike McDaniel's hoping that the return on investment is going to be that Tua plays better football, knowing that his coach had his back. So we'll see what happens with that situation. And the Colts owner, Jim Irsay, returns to team practice following respiratory illness in January. Jim Irsay made his return to the field on Sunday. The Colts owner, who was treated for a severe respiratory illness in January, was back with his team at training camp. Good to see that. Fired up. The energy from teams and fans was electric outside of Indianapolis. And this is what Irsay said in March. I've appreciated all the prayers and concerns. It's a long road and you have to be patient. The great news is everything is going well. Irsay also underwent leg surgery this past year, saying in March that the procedure was one of 26 he's undergone over the past 7 years. He said it was done to improve his mobility. The 65-year-old Irsay is entering his 38th season with the Colts after becoming the NFL's youngest general manager at 25 years old in 1984. Irsay has been at the helm of the Colts' day-to-day operations since 1995 after his father, owner Robert Irsay, suffered a stroke. Jim Irsay became the team's owner officially in 1997 after he won a legal battle with his stepmother to keep the franchise. During his time as owner, Irsay's Colts have gone into the playoffs 16 times, won 2 AFC championships, and 1 Super Bowl. So Jim Irsay is healthy and back on the field for the Colts. You love to see that. And Bucs general manager Jason Licht, optimistic on deal with Tristan Wirfs. And this is what he said. I think he deserves to be the highest paid left tackle. Tristan Wirfs and the Bucs general manager appear to be in agreement on his value. The fifth-year pro is seeking a new deal heading into a contract year, and although the sides haven't found a number, the general manager recently shared that he believes the team's cornerstone left tackle should earn an income at the top of his field. I was on with WDAE talking about Antoine Winfield at one point, saying, hey, this guy deserves to be the highest paid safety. And I'd say the same thing on Tristan. And this is what the general manager said on 95.3's The Drive. So we're working very diligently to see how we can do that, how it can be done from both sides as well, so it doesn't hurt our future, so we can still continue to win, but we can also reward him. And they have to, man. Wirfs has been absolutely incredible. He currently stands to make $18.6 million on his fifth-year rookie option. The Vikings' Christian Darrisaw reset the market for left tackles on Tuesday by signing a deal that gives him $26 million per year. Now is the mark to aim for Christian Wirfs, as well as a one-time All-Pro Pro Bowler in 3 seasons. Wirfs has a case to match or top that contract. He finished last year in PFF's top 5 highest graded linemen with an 84.3 pass blocking grade, just 1 point behind Darrisaw, who saw the reset the market with the $26 million per year. As well as as a part of the contract dance, Wirfs sat out of voluntary offseason work. So this is something that they're going to need to get done to get him back into the action. It might be what he's done since that he's gained the most traction, or at least very least respect from the front office. So sometimes this stuff really works out for you. In Tristan Wirfs' case, he's getting a lot of respect and traction, getting the ball rolling by sitting out of this voluntary offseason workout. The 25-year-old showed for mandatory minicamp, and he's taken a different approach to training camp than several of his peers that are seeking new deals. Packers quarterback Jordan Love held in until he signed his extension. Tua Tagovailoa fluctuated until he scored his contract. Brandon Ayuk is still holding in, while Wirfs' fellow left tackle Trent Williams has been holding out. As for Wirfs, he's practiced throughout, contract or not. That hasn't gone unnoticed. He's such an unselfish guy as well, out here practicing like he's been. It's not surprising given the unselfishness that he has, wanting to not let his teammates down or the quarterback down. We're continuing to work hard on both ends, and we have really good communication. I can promise you this: Tristan's going to be playing for the Bucs this year. He's going to be playing for the Bucs in the distant future. I think we're going to get something done at some point. I just can't tell you when, but I'm optimistic that it'll be hopefully really soon. So we'll keep you up to date with that. But Tristan Wirfs, you're getting that kind of language from the general manager. Like, look, he's going to be our guy this year and the foreseeable future. This is a deal that's going to get done. It's just a matter of when, not if. But it is a different approach. Tristan Wirfs, unlike all these other guys, is actually still showing up to practice, practicing with his team. And that normally happens when a player has it in good faith that he's going to get the contract, which sounds like what's happening here. So this seems kind of similar to Trevor Lawrence's situation, where he's like, I'm not worried about it. It's going to get done. Tristan Wirfs is going to be the highest paid left tackle in the league. And I think it's possible that the Bucs might want to get this done before what's his name? Trent Williams. Before Trent Williams gets his deal done. Because I would imagine Trent Williams' deal is going to be done pretty soon, because there's no scenario where Trent Williams isn't on the field week 1. He's just way too valuable to the 49ers operation. So that is your NFL news for the weekend, along with your NFL fantasy sleepers. As always, you guys can follow me on NFL with Kyle on X. And you can like this video. If you got any value out of it, please consider hitting the like button and sharing it. We are consistently growing. We got up to 57 subscribers here. We got 2 new subscribers today after I posted a short on Jordan Love's contract. So thank you to all the people that are contributing to this channel and the people that are just now coming into the family. You can expect this kind of content throughout the week. And we had Bill in here, we had Nash in here, and we had some other people that were watching that are no names. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I will see you guys on a very short episode, a very soon episode of NFL with Kyle. But tomorrow, you guys can find me on the Only Football Podcast, shooting another episode with my partner, Rick. We are going to be giving you guys a really good episode tomorrow, and I'm really excited about it. So thank you guys for watching. It is Sunday night. I hope you get a very good night's rest and you start Monday off with good energy. Make sure that you're taking care of yourself. Have a great work week, and I will see you guys tomorrow.